On March 3, 2025, a black Honda Accord rolled into my bay just after lunch. The owner was a quiet guy, maybe in his early 50s, the kind of driver who keeps records and changes his oil on schedule. He said the transmission had started hesitating. Not slipping, not jerking violently, just hesitating. A half-second delay before finding the right gear. A strange lag when pulling into traffic. A subtle roughness that was not there 6 months ago. He had already been to one shop. They told him his transmission was wearing out and handed him a quote for $3,400. He drove away without signing anything. He drove to me instead. I did not touch the transmission. I did not drop the pan. I did not run a pressure test or pull a single solenoid. What I did took less than 3 minutes, cost nothing, and by the time he left my parking lot, the hesitation was completely gone. That moment is the reason this video exists. Because what is quietly happening inside millions of Japanese transmissions right now is not a mechanical failure, it is a data failure. And once you understand the difference, you will never look at a transmission problem the same way again. Here is what no one tells you when you buy a Japanese car. The transmission is not just a mechanical system anymore, it is a thinking system. It learns, it remembers, it builds a profile of how you drive and then uses that profile to decide exactly when to shift, how hard to shift, and how much pressure to apply at every moment. That intelligence is what makes transmissions from Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Subaru, and Mazda feel so smooth when they are working correctly. But that same intelligence is also what destroys them quietly when things go wrong. Because once bad data gets into the system, the transmission does not question it. It trusts it completely, and it acts on it every single mile you drive. I have been working on transmissions for over 20 years, and I will tell you something the industry does not like to advertise. The majority of transmission problems I see in Japanese vehicles are not physical failures. They are software failures. They are memory failures. They are calibration failures. The clutch packs are fine. The solenoids are functioning. The fluid is clean. But the transmission control module, TCM, is operating on corrupted or outdated information and making decisions that slowly destroy the hardware underneath it. This is the part that should make your stomach drop. A transmission control module that is operating on bad adaptive data does not just shift poorly. It holds clutches engaged too long. It applies incorrect line pressure. It shifts at the wrong revolutions per minute for the conditions. And it does all of this thousands of times every single day without ever throwing a fault code that would tell you something is wrong. The driver feels a little roughness, a little hesitation, a slight delay. They assume it is normal wear, they keep driving. And every mile they drive, those microsecond errors accumulate inside the hardware. Clutch packs that should engage gently are engaging abruptly. Bands that should hold for a precise fraction of a second are holding too long. Fluid that should be circulating cleanly is being sheared harder than necessary. The transmission is not braking from the outside in, it is being instructed to brake from the inside out. Think about what a Japanese automatic transmission actually does. In a Toyota or Honda, the transmission control module communicates with the engine control module, the throttle position sensor, the vehicle speed sensor, the brake switch, the turbine speed sensor, and often a separate set of internal pressure sensors, all simultaneously. It takes all of that data, compares it against its stored adaptive memory, and makes shift decisions in real time. Under ideal conditions, that process produces the silky smoothness Japanese transmissions are famous for. But modern transmissions do not live in ideal conditions. They live in traffic, in cold starts, in summer heat, in situations where the battery weakens for one winter and the module browns out, where a software update slightly changes how a signal is interpreted, or where driving patterns shift after a long trip and the adaptive learning begins to drift. And here is the cruel part. Japanese transmissions are specifically engineered to adapt. They learn your driving style. They shift softer if you accelerate gently. They shift firmer if you drive aggressively. They compensate for altitude. They adjust for temperature. That adaptability is what makes them exceptional when everything is calibrated correctly. But adaptability without correction is just drift. And drift, left uncorrected, becomes destruction. I have seen this pattern hundreds of times. A 2018 Toyota Camry with 85,000 miles shifts perfectly until the owner takes it on a long road trip through mountains. After that, the transmission feels different. Shifts feel slightly sluggish going up or abrupt coming down from highway speed. The owner notices but assumes it is just how the car behaves on those roads. What actually happened is the transmission control module adapted its shift logic to compensate for sustained load and grade. When the driver returned to flat city driving, the module kept those mountainous adaptations active. It was now applying pressure curves and shift timing designed for climbing grades to a car idling through suburban intersections. Nothing broke. Nothing failed. The car just started slowly, silently, accumulating stress it was never supposed to carry. The same thing happens after battery replacement. One of the most dangerous moments for a Japanese transmission is immediately after a new battery is installed. Drivers assume a fresh battery is a fresh start. It is not. When power is restored without proper reinitialization, the transmission control module comes back online with fragmented memory. Some adaptations survived the power cycle, others did not. The module now has a patchwork of old and empty learning tables, and it starts filling in the gaps based on whatever driving conditions exist in those first few minutes. If you floor it pulling out of the driveway after a battery swap, you just taught your transmission control module that aggressive input is normal. It will build its adaptive logic around that assumption, and every shift afterward will carry a little more aggression than the engineers intended. This is why transmission problems in Japanese vehicles are so often diagnosed at the wrong level. A technician plugs in a scanner, does not find a fault code, checks fluid level, looks at the pan for debris, and says the transmission is fine. They are not wrong about the hardware, but they are ignoring the software layer that is running the hardware incorrectly. It is the same as a computer running perfectly good programs on a corrupted operating system and wondering why everything feels slow and unstable. So what is actually happening right now in your Japanese transmission while you drive? The answer depends on your vehicle history. How old is the battery? Has it ever been replaced without a proper relearn procedure? Has the car been through a software update at a dealership? Has the driving pattern changed significantly in the last year? Have you towed anything? Have you recently changed from city driving to highway driving or the other way around? All of those events create inflection points where adaptive memory can drift. And drift is invisible. It does not announce itself. It does not light up a dashboard. It just quietly changes how thousands of decisions are made inside your transmission every single day. The real cost is not the fix. The real cost is what happens when you do not fix it in time. Incorrect line pressure wears clutch material. Mistimed shifts accelerate band wear. Abrupt engagements shorten torque converter life. These are real mechanical consequences of a software problem that should never have reached the hardware in the first place. Most drivers who eventually need a rebuild never understand that the root cause was not the clutch pack that finally gave out. It was the corrupted learning table that told the clutch pack to engage incorrectly for 30,000 miles before it finally failed. Now you understand the problem. You understand why it is invisible, why it is dangerous, and why it accumulates damage silently. The next question is what you can actually do about it. And this is where most mechanics stop the conversation, because the answer is simpler and cheaper than the industry wants you to believe. The fix starts with something called a transmission adaptive reset. Every Japanese transmission control module, TCM, has a procedure to clear its stored adaptive memory and return shift logic to factory baseline. This is not a dealer exclusive. It is not proprietary. It is a designed-in function that engineers included specifically because they knew adaptive learning would drift over time and need correction. In a Toyota with a U-Series or A-Series automatic, the procedure involves a specific drive cycle after a reset, a full stop, a partial throttle acceleration to a defined speed, light braking, and a sustained cruise period that allows the transmission control module to rebuild clean data from scratch. In a Honda with a continuously variable transmission, CVT, or a conventional automatic, the reset often involves a battery disconnect combined with a specific idle and drive cycle that lets the transmission relearn clutch and belt engagement from a clean state. In Nissan RE series and Jotco transmissions, the reset procedure is slightly more involved because Nissan adaptive logic is among the most aggressive in the industry. Nissan transmissions learn quickly and drift quickly, which is why they are particularly sensitive to uncorrected adaptation drift, and why some Nissan continuously variable transmissions developed a reputation, deserved or not, for unpredictability. The procedure requires clearing the TCM memory, idling the engine to full operating temperature without moving the vehicle, and then performing a controlled drive cycle at specific speeds before any normal driving resumes. These procedures exist in service manuals. They are real, they are documented, and they are almost never recommended proactively because they do not generate revenue. There is no part to sell, no assembly to remove, no labor rate to justify. A 3-minute reset procedure with a 15-minute relearn drive costs the shop nothing and bills for nothing, so it simply does not happen unless the driver knows to ask. Here is what the reset actually does. When you clear the adaptive memory in a Japanese transmission control module, you are not erasing the transmission's ability to think. You are erasing the incorrect conclusions it drew from incomplete or corrupted data. The module still has its factory shift maps, it still has its base pressure tables, it still knows how to operate the transmission correctly. What you have removed is the layer of learned compensation that was built on bad information. Once that layer is gone, the transmission starts fresh. It observes actual clutch engagement speed. It monitors real pressure response. It watches turbine speed, vehicle speed, throttle input, and temperature under current real-world conditions, and builds a new adaptive profile that reflects how the car actually operates today, not how it operated during a mountain trip 2 years ago, not how it operated when the battery was dying, not how it operated when a software update briefly changed the signal interpretation window. The relearn phase is as important as the reset itself. A reset without a proper relearn is like wiping a dry erase board and immediately writing bad information on it again. If you reset your transmission and immediately drive aggressively through stop-and-go traffic with heavy throttle inputs, the module will learn those patterns as normal and rebuild its adaptive tables around them. If instead you drive gently, smoothly, and calmly through a 15 to 20-minute relearn cycle, you give the module clean data to work with. Start from idle. Let the engine reach full operating temperature before moving. Accelerate to 30 miles per hour with gentle, steady throttle. Hold that speed. Then ease up to 50 miles per hour with light acceleration. Hold again. Then slow to a stop smoothly. That simple sequence, done once after a reset, teaches the transmission control module what gentle, normal driving looks like. And everything it learns from that point forward is built on a clean, accurate baseline. The result is not subtle. That Honda Accord I mentioned at the beginning of this video left my shop shifting as cleanly as it did when it was new. No rebuilds, no solenoids, no clutch packs, no pan drop. The owner called me 3 days later to tell me the hesitation was completely gone and his fuel economy had improved. That is what happens when a transmission stops compensating for a problem that does not exist anymore. Before you spend $1 on any transmission repair on a Japanese vehicle, know this. If your symptoms appeared gradually, if there are no fault codes, if the fluid looks and smells clean, if the car shifts fine sometimes and rough other times, you almost certainly have an adaptive drift problem. Adaptive drift is not a mechanical failure. It is a calibration failure. It costs nothing to fix. It takes 3 minutes to perform and 15 minutes to relearn. It will save you from repair bills that should never have been necessary in the first place. The most expensive transmission repair I have ever seen was on a perfectly healthy transmission. The hardware was fine, the fluid was fine, the solenoids tested clean, but the adaptive memory had been silently applying incorrect shift logic for over 40,000 miles. And by the time the owner finally brought it in, the clutch material was gone. A $40 procedure done 18 months earlier would have prevented a $3,800 rebuild. That driver did not have a transmission problem. They had an information problem. And information problems, unlike mechanical failures, can always be corrected before they become expensive. The uncomfortable truth is that your Japanese transmission is almost certainly operating on outdated adaptive data right now. Not because something is broken, not because you did anything wrong, simply because that is what adaptive learning does over time. It drifts, and drift, uncorrected, becomes damage. If this video changed how you think about transmission problems, hit like so more drivers see it before they sign a repair order they should not have to sign. Subscribe if you want to keep learning how to protect your vehicle from the quiet problems that cost the most. And if you have ever had a transmission issue disappear after a reset that a shop wanted to charge you for, drop it in the comments. Those stories are exactly why this channel exists. Your transmission is not dying, it is confused, and now you know how to fix it.